if you're unfamiliar with Shithead, I'd like to show you how to play. So the game will begin with each player having 3 blinds and a starting hand of 6 cards. And the object of the game is going to be getting rid of the cards in your hand so you can start getting rid of the cards on top of these blinds. And the first one out isn't the shithead. You play until the last person's out. So how the game works is there will be a center pile. Let's say when it comes to your turn, 6 is the top card of that center pile. You can play anything that matches 6 or goes higher than it. So you could say 7, or you can even hop up. You don't have to go in order. You could throw a couple of jacks. You could throw just 1 jack. And most cards are just numbers. There are special cards that we'll get to. So the Joker is a 0 that can be played on anything. And this is a change. There are a couple of changes. There's this Joker, and the 10 has now been changed since the last version. This is now version 3, the 3rd edition here. But that essentially resets the pile. So say the top card was a jack, you don't have anything higher than a jack. You could play this Joker, and then the next player can play anything because anything is going to be higher than 0 or equal to it. The same thing with the 2. It is just a card that's low that can be played on anything. The 3 can be played on anything, but it acts as though it's clear. So say there's that jack, you play this 3. The next player doesn't play on a 3, they play on whatever's under this, because it's as if the card were invisible. So the next player would still have to meet or go higher than a jack, or play one of these magic cards, which are the ones that you can play on anything. 7s temporarily reverse the order. When there's a 7, it can't be played on anything, it has to be played in order, but the next player has to play 7 or less. So it sort of changes the rules for 1. The 8 skips the next player. So if you play 2 of them, you skip the next 2 players. If you play 3 of them, you skip the next 3. 10. This is a card that, if you have an earlier version, it can be played on anything, but I decided that was just too good. Because what 10 does is it just removes the pile from the game, which means nobody can pick it up, and you get to play again. So that's a very powerful card. Why things being removed from the game matters is, let's say there's been a pretty big stack of cards. It gets back to you. You can't play anything. You've got nothing you can do. You have to pick up the whole stack, which makes it way harder for you to go out and puts you at risk of being the shithead. So, as a quick demonstration, we'll do a couple rounds of just a mock game here between these 2 players. And you can play this with 1 deck of cards. You could probably get away with maybe 5 people. It's probably best at 4. But when you decide what cards you want on top, you want to choose cards that are higher so that when your opponent knows you're going to play them, you don't have to be as much at the mercy of what they do before your turn. And it's also best to do doubles because you're allowed to play things that match. So that's actually a pretty good hand for that player. This player ace is high. That can be played on anything, so that's a nice thing to do. An alternative would be to maybe put both of the 9s on and hope that you could do it, but since there are several good cards that you can rely on, we're going to just do it like that. So it normally goes the first person to flap down a 4. Neither of these players have a 4, so we would do that until 5 or 6. They both have a 6, so I'll just sort of start with 1. And then this player would refresh back up to 3 after their play. So they could do something interesting. They could skip this player, then play a couple of 9s to draw 2 cards. And eventually this is going to run out. So a tip is don't play doubles of really good cards early before this runs out, because if you do, you might have those cards be replaced by bad cards. So let's say that's done. We've drawn the whole deck. Now that they've played this 9, there's nothing to refresh it. They are, you know, just one step closer to being out of their hands, so they're allowed to play here. So this player, let's say, goes Jack. These guys cannot play the 10s. They would have to pick up the whole stack. And let's say this player does this 10, removes it from the game. They get to play again. They play a 7. And I guess they could just do the king, because they know that this team, or this player here, didn't have something on the jack, so they're going to have to pick up a king as well. And eventually, let's say these have been played. We have a stack. When it goes to this player's turn, they can't look at any of these. That player just has to flip blind and hope that it can land on it. In this case, it can. It's a 2. And 2 can be played on anything. So, pretending these guys are out of a hand as well, they could play the 3 queens. They'd have to get lucky again. They did not. This is still played, but now this player would have a hand. And when this player goes to play their blind, it's on an empty stack, so anything goes. And then these guys would have to get out of the hand before they could try to play this card and win. But yeah, that's it.